Hey, all my Leo friends. Welcome to my channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your October 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about the sign of Leo, I'm referring to Leo rising as dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Leo sun, Leo moon, and if you have 3 or more planets in the sign of Leo, this video is for you as well. When I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. I'm going to pull the chart up right now, and we're going to jump right in. It's a busy month as we will start the month with an eclipse on the 2nd. But before we get there, let's look at the first day of the month where we see Mars is in Cancer. Cancer is your 12th house. This is the house of the unseen. This is the house of self-undoing. It's also a house that rules our home and family, meaning the Cancer energy rules the home and family and hearth and the roots that you were brought up in. It represents the type of nurturing you got. And when we look at Mars traveling through the 12th house, we're looking at Mars in fall, where Mars doesn't necessarily feel respected, doesn't necessarily feel heard. The Cancer energy is very nurturing and very loving, and Mars is kind of harsh and direct. So there's a little bit of a conflict. And we see here that what's happening is there is something sitting underneath the surface of you, Leo, that is nagging at you, that's saying it's time for a transformation. It's time to take care of me. It's time to nurture me. It's time to transform that which has held me back. And that's the square we see to the Sun and Mercury in Libra, which is your 3rd house. That house is the house of communications, the house of media, the house of your siblings, the house of your workmates, teammates, the roadways which you travel on, naturally ruled by Gemini. Then we overlay onto that dynamic the idea of Libra, creating peace and harmony, partnerships that are committed and dedicated and cooperative. So we have a bit of a struggle here because what could be happening is you could feel unseen in your input, and this is making you feel a little challenged in your thought or challenged in your communication with others. You may find yourself being a little bit, maybe even on an interior emotional level, annoyed. We also see that it starts with a trine to Venus, and Venus is in your 4th house of home, which actually naturally is ruled by Cancer. Again, your 12th house. This is a house where you don't feel seen. And well, we've got Mars feeling unheard. So this is a frustrating energy. It's frustrating, especially when you're trying to communicate with other people right now and assert yourself. But I think what's being offered to you is an opportunity to look at your history. We've got Pisces ruling your 8th house of transformation, of other people's influence, money, sex. And when I say influence, I really kind of mean more their power and control over you through the dynamics that you commingle. The 8th house is where we start to commingle our resources and where we can see imbalance in those resources. And oftentimes, what we'll see is that money, or the person who has money, is the dominant energy because they appear to have the resources to provide. This is going to come up for review with you. Saturn is ruling history. Saturn is ruling an ability to build. It also rules your deepest fears, repression, people who have authority over you. Now we're looking at this dominating your 8th house of transformation that's naturally ruled by Scorpio, where Venus is sitting right now. And Venus is in a loose trine here to Saturn. So we kind of have a grand trine of these planets. So Mars is offering an opportunity to slow down, to really think about what it is that you want to experience in your everyday life. Venus is offering you an opportunity in this house of Scorpio to really consider how Venus is also in detriment. So she's in a challenging energy as well, but to see how the rules of the home or the environment of the home. And traditionally, that 4th house is the home we were raised in. Okay. So we're going to want to look at how we process other people's influence over us. And then we go then to the Pisces energy that is really addressing this subconscious. The Pisces energy is where we want to escape, where we want to just not look at the darkness of the world. And yet at the same time, Saturn is encouraging all of us as it transits through Pisces to create a strong foundation with our inner voice, with our heavenly team, with our sense of spirituality. So that is how Mars becomes a peaceful warrior while feeling a little bit challenged by potential siblings, workmates, teammates, or your everyday life. First day of the month. Now let's go to the eclipse that's taking place on the 2nd. This is a solar eclipse in Libra. It is at 11:49 a.m. Pacific time. And as I think I said earlier, it's the last eclipse of the season. Eclipses bring in fated events, situations, people, dynamics. And sometimes we think those things are happening to us, but what they're offering us is a choice of action. So here, what I think is really powerful is we see that the sun and the moon are coming together in your third house at 10 degrees. The 10th degree represents the Capricorn degree. So we can look at how we're creating what we want to build, the fears we want to address, or the limitations and restrictions that we want to address, meaning address them to move them out of the way. But what I think is even more significant than that is the 10 represents a series of ones. We see this solar eclipse is conjunct Mercury. Mercury, again, ruling my mind, my speech, the type of information that I read and see scrolling through Yahoo or TikTok or any of these platforms. So I think that's really important because this is planting the seeds for new thought, planting the seeds for a new experience within the way that you communicate, absorb information. The third house is also a house naturally ruled by Gemini. Gemini rules democracy. And democracy is about the people. This is very different than talking about the United States Constitution, because here there could be thoughts of how to create peace and harmony for everybody, for the neighborhood, wanting to experience things in a more cooperative manner. We're also looking at the idea that Libra represents your partnerships. And there is the potential that those of you that are in relationship will be planting the seeds for a new experience within your partnerships, potentially more connectedness, more enjoyment, more fun. Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus likes comfort. We also happen to see that Venus is now at 11 degrees. So we're seeing 11, 11, 10, 10. This is a series of ones that are really bringing forth an awareness that your thoughts are manifesting very quickly. Be mindful of that which you are thinking. I also can even take that further because we're seeing Pluto here at the very last degrees of Capricorn. Will not revisit the Capricorn energy until for another 248 years. And this is in your house of work, the 6th house. It's your house of health, but it's also the house that we call of enslavement. And potentially there have been thoughts or obligations or duties that have been superimposed upon you. And Pluto is now giving you an opportunity to rewrite those, to rebirth those. We see Pluto again, 29 degrees reduces down to an 11. It's making a sextile to Neptune, which is giving me again support from my spiritual team. Here's the 28, reduces down to a 10. Now, this aspect is going to go on for over a decade, this sextile between Pluto and Neptune. And the trine between Pluto and Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus is your 10th house of career, of public image. Taurus rules our possessions, our voice, our ability to make money. So there's a liberation being offered to you in many ways. Many people may find their status in life changing unexpectedly. You could go from being childless to being a parent. You could go from being single to being married. You could go from married to being divorced. You could go from being an employee to an entrepreneur. There's a shift of some kind. And this is again a building energy. So during this eclipse, where we are planting the seeds for a new experience, I think it's very powerful to go into our emotional body rather than our mental body and be aware of what we focus in on. And I want to offer this too, because very much for my Leos, this may have something to do with your siblings and or your children. The third house naturally rules early childhood years. It also rules the experience with your siblings, and Mercury is here. So there could be either new cooperations or there could be dynamics that start revealing themselves that create some sort of awareness. Sometimes siblings don't always mesh well. And rather than trying to push together because of the idea that we're siblings, maybe we just sort of learn how to be harmonious in more, I almost want to say distant ways. I don't know why I want to say that for my Leos, but I do. Let's now go to the 7th, where we're going to see a pretty tight trine now between Venus and Mars. And I think this has been a growing influence where we're seeing the feminine and the masculine, while they're both in challenge in these signs, it kind of gives them an opportunity to approach things from a different perspective. And I think that's really powerful. And again, we still have a loose grand trine with Saturn in its later stages of its retrograde. So somewhere there's going to be an opportunity for you to take action, and it could be on an emotional basis, because again, Cancer is your 12th house. Scorpio is your 4th house. So you may reconcile something or recognize that some things are what they are. Like some people just really never shift or change, and there could be a surrender to that. We do see that square between Mars, the Sun, and Mercury is still in play. So I do think that that's something to be mindful of, because without realizing it, you could inadvertently diminish yourself, Leo, because of that 12th house energy is telling you that people think you're too big and you suck up all the air in the room. But I don't believe that's necessarily true. In fact, most Leos that I meet have they're the opposite of that. They're fun loving and they're comfortable in a crowd, but they're not trying to suck up the air in the room. So I just think this is an opportunity for a little bit of a rewrite in how you perceive other people's opinions. I'm just saying. Okay, now let's go to Jupiter retrograding in Gemini, your 11th house of hopes and dreams. This will start on the 9th. And I'm not necessarily changing the time back to 12 o'clock because I'm only 10 minutes away from 12 o'clock at 11:49 a.m. So just want y'all to know I did that. But so Jupiter retrogrades in this 11th house, which really gives you an opportunity to expand your social circles, your friends, you could even potentially rethink some social groups that you hang out with or you're engaged in. You may want to eventually move into them a little bit more deeply, or you may choose to move out of them altogether. This retrograde of Jupiter is going to take place until February 4th, 2025, where it will go back to 11 degrees of Gemini before moving forward again, and then ultimately moving into its exaltation in June of 2025. So this is important. This Jupiter starts off with that trine to the Sun and Mercury, but it's more, it's a tighter square to Mercury. And this to me is sort of this opportunity for me to have a broader perspective, Jupiter, about what's happening with the Mercury energy. Again, this could be your teammates, your workmates, your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, the people on the roadway. And Jupiter is giving this supportive energy for you to sort of rewrite your belief system. And I also, or not maybe completely rewrite it, but about whatever is coming up or has come up as a result of this eclipse season. Jupiter is also making this nice sextile to Aries in your 9th house of beliefs, of foreign travel, foreign people, philosophy. It rules the judicial system It rules those higher court systems. I also kind of think it rules higher forms of government. Maybe we look at like the president and the leadership in the 10th house, but in the 9th house, we see the systems that support that. So here, and we have this overlay of the self, Aries, the self, pioneering into new beliefs. So I think that this supports whatever you're walking through that could potentially be challenging. We do see that while Jupiter and Venus are friends, considered friends for the most part, there's a blind side of something. And this could feel like your self-worth for me. You could, Leo, inadvertently be feeling invisible or feeling somehow vulnerable to the Scorpio energy of your 4th house. If you are a stay-at-home parent or homemaker of some kind, or you're not pulling in enough resources, you could feel vulnerable to that. But what Jupiter is really asking is for you to see the bigger picture of things. Now, Jupiter is in its detriment. Many of the planets right now are in their detriment. The sun is in detriment or in fall when it's in Libra. Venus is in detriment. And the subtle nuance between being in fall and detriment is fall is where you feel disrespected, you don't feel heard. Being in detriment, you feel out of control, you feel uneasy, you feel like a fish out of water, and it makes you act more on an uncomfortable fear-based platform rather than feeling a sense of ease walking. So when we pull the chart up, we've got Mars is in its fall. We've got the sun in fall. We've got Venus in detriment. We've got Jupiter in detriment. Saturn is not the best in Pisces, meaning normally Saturn would really be feeling like, I don't like the emotional body. But from my perception, Saturn wants us to build a strong foundation with our spiritual principles. So all this is starting, and we've barely gotten 2 weeks into the month. Let's go now to Pluto. Pluto will move direct on the 11th, but it's pretty late in the day. So I'm going to move. Well, actually, I'm going to leave it. No, I will. I'll move one day. I don't know if you were looking closely, but right now Pluto is at 29 degrees, 38 minutes of Capricorn. Again, Capricorn is your 6th house of work, of your mental health, your physical health, meaning your mental health as far as stress goes. It also rules your work environment. I couldn't help but notice, again, the 29 reduces down to an 11, but the 38 minutes also reduces down to an 11. So I really think that we are very much coming into an awareness that our thoughts manifest. And when we focus on anger, frustration, worry, doubt, lack, we draw in experiences that support that thought. And when we shift into a more faithful experience or a more intentional thought, we start to experience those things as well. So I think this is really powerful. We also see that Pluto is in a square here to Mercury. And this could be a little bit of a challenge in the idea of your 3rd house represents those teammates again, right? This sort of idea of a group of people, how you think, the information that you absorb yourself in. And there could very well be a challenge strictly with government. We're going through an election season. I'm pretty sure the whole world is aware of that here in the United States. And, we are almost, just a few weeks away from that election. So there could be a lot of things that happen in the environment around our Leos that is stressful. People are, and this could be kind of like, while the government has one level of influence over us during the election season, you could find the authorities in your life are also sort of mirroring this challenging energy of feeling a tension, a push-pull between an old version of what you want and then a newer version. And I think that is, again, supported by Uranus and Neptune, and that's going to continue again for a long time. Okay, let's go to the 13th, where Mercury will enter Scorpio. And as Mercury enters Scorpio, I'll go to the 14th. Mercury is going to approach the Shapley attractor. That is at 2 degrees of Scorpio, and anything within 10 to 12 degrees of that is influential. The tighter the orb, the more intense the energy. But what we see at this Shapley attractor is the universe at large offering us an opportunity to release false attachments. As Mercury reaches this, it's false attachments to my mind, to what maybe even some of the historic things that I have are rooted in my experience here. Again, the fourth house being the house of home, it rules how you were raised, the traditions. Some people get up in the morning and they drink like seaweed water, and some people get up in the morning and have bacon and eggs, and some people have coffee and nothing else. I'm using that as a very mundane example of the imprint that we get from our fourth house. So Mercury is coming into this opportunity to release any attachments that are no longer valid, no longer serving you, no longer working in your favor. And we see the sun is in a challenging dynamic again to Mars. This has been going on all month. So there very well could be, for my Leos, this feeling of I'm trying to assert myself. I'm trying to shine my light in my world, and it's being thwarted by this Mars energy. And that could be a male experience, or a very dominant female that's sitting in the background, sort of. Again, third house is communications. So your awareness of this will make it easier to sort of sidestep anybody who's kind of shows up with that energy in your experience. We also see an opposition between Venus and Uranus on this day. So we're looking at Taurus being your 10th house, and this is an opportunity truly to liberate yourself and maybe even rebel a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting into an argument, but it does mean that you may stand your ground. And you may kind of say to yourself, I don't know if I want to do your version of me anymore. That's the way I want to put it. So there I'm going. Now we're going to go to the 17th, where we're going to have a full moon. And I just don't mind telling y'all, it's my birthday. I'm going to be an old lady, officially, according to Google. But don't tell anybody. Shh. All right. So the full moon is happening at 24 degrees of Aries. The sun is in a trine to Jupiter. Jupiter, again, is retrograde now. So let's click on this. Whenever we have a full moon, the sun and the moon are in an opposition to one another. It is the brightest phase of the moon, and it is an illumination, a culmination, a conclusion, a potential new chapter. And I say that because there is an ending as a result of the illumination. I also think when I say conclusions that I want to be very clear that it's not the conclusion like I'm giving a synonym for being an ending. It's a conclusion that I come to. Oh, I know why this happened. So the moon being conjunct Chiron, and in this house of, how you believe, the ninth house, foreign travel, foreign people, foreign places, this gives you an opportunity to Aries is your ninth house, to really see if how you're putting yourself forward is aligned to your deeper truth. And this is what I want to say, because again, Leos get a bad rap for being so big and coming in the room and, oh, you're a Leo. And this isn't about any of that. This is about asserting yourself in a way that's authentic and not worrying about being too big. Because I think sometimes the people that criticize the big are people who hold themselves small. So I think at this time, there's an illumination, and there's something that could potentially blindside you. That quincunx from the sun to Uranus could be that piece of information that provides the conclusion or the ending. I think the support of Jupiter is important, because Jupiter, again, is giving you an opportunity to see how you think. Jupiter is in Gemini, in your 11th house, being able to really connect to your hopes and your dreams and the expansion of your moving forward. And I want to say it this way. The 11th house rules the future. It rules technology, it rules astrology, it rules experimentation, almost like some hypotheses that we put into play, and then we experiment and we play with them and we create new things. So there's a process. It's also a house that represents a delay. So things come over time. So as you are in your own headspace saying and affirming the things that you want, you're helping Uranus without really knowing how that's going to play out. I'm sorry, helping Jupiter without knowing. Meh. Jupiter will support this. Uranus will not, will inadvertently bring up an event that is unexpected that you can't see coming, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a challenge. It may be a challenge on an emotional level, but I don't think it's a challenge on a heart chakra level. For some reason, it feels like it gives me an opportunity to shift something, shift how I'm perceiving something, shift how I'm operating at something. It feels like an epiphany out of nowhere. It just doesn't feel negative to me for some reason. I don't know why. Now, we still see that we have this opposition growing between Pluto and Mars. This is definitely going to be a challenge. And the sun is squaring both of those things. This is where there's the potential that there's a deep psychological imprint that's been holding you small. Like if you were a child who, I have Leos in my family, and my mother really supported my sister becoming like a little child actress. And the reason I say this to you is because there could be something from your childhood that somebody labeled you in a certain way, and you still play to that role. And that's why I think Mars being challenged in your 12th house is asking you to be brave about how you respond to you, looking at the deep psychological imprints that Pluto represents. See, they're in opposition right now, and how that really that opposition could be the illumination that happens that allows you to shift your beliefs. But it's also your willingness, because you are ruled by the sun, to allow that sun to shine in its most authentic vibration. Sometimes when we're in one group, people think we're too big for our britches. And then we step into another group and people embrace our britches because they like to wear big britches too. So I think that's really that Gemini energy here in your 11th house and the potential expansion of that and the review that's being offered in how you want to implement that, or the groups you're in, or how you're perceiving your future. Okay, let's go on to, we're going to go a little later into the day. And we are going to see Venus enter. I'm going to go to 9 p.m. Hopefully it's far enough. Venus has entered Sagittarius. She enjoys the Sagittarian energy. She enjoys the travel. She enjoys the expansion. She enjoys the wealth. She's also the first planet of Venus, Mercury, and the sun that is going to traverse the Sagittarius energy. And that is going to put each one of those planets over the great attractor, as well as the galactic center. So first, Venus is going to, as she enters, she's going to start to think about what does she want to attract in her world? What does she want to bring to her? This is the expansive thoughts that I think have been opening up for her. When we click on her, we see, yes, there's still the opposition to Uranus, but at this point, I don't think that is, it's more about, is the technology out there? Will the group be out there? That it's more a questioning energy, that opposition, because I really like the way that I'm looking at this sextile and the trine to Neptune and the trine to the North Node, supporting Venus to assert herself in a creative way and allow for a transformation. She's just not going to be able to see directly how that's going to happen. And that's why moving into the Sagittarius energy is so beautiful, because as she gets within a few degrees of the great attractor and starts to focus her mind on what she wants versus what she lacks, she'll start to attract that to her. So that's pretty terrific. And let's go to the 22nd. And that's when the sun will move into Scorpio. And as the sun moves into Scorpio, it is going to come onto that Shapley attractor. So now the sun, after having still in a challenging dynamic to Mars, still in a challenging dynamic to Pluto, is going to be literally saying, what attachments do I have that don't serve me anymore? I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not, whatever your I'm not is really going to create some tension as the sun moves over this point, because the sun is following Venus is being there, then Mercury. So now the sun is going to say, how am I going to push that new version of myself as I've released false attachments? I'm always going to be poor. I'll never find that parking space. I'll never meet the love of my life. I'll always be oppressed. All those thoughts don't serve you. So as we look at the sun here, moving into this spot, there's a huge T square. So you being brave enough, Leo, to let I guess what I want to say in the way of being brave, it's sort of like I want to say a seesaw kind of thing, because there's a certain amount of you that as you surrender to whatever transformation that you really want, whatever's most important to you, yes, it can create some disruption, but in the long run, it may create something much better. And oftentimes that's where I say the manure makes your garden grow. So I think this is important, and this is going to go on for a day or two. And we already see Venus is already at 6 degrees, and she's just almost just 8 degrees away from that attractor, the Shapley the great attractor. So that's really powerful. Okay. Now let's watch what Venus does next. Because I'm going to go over to the 29th. Then there she is on the great attractor. She is in a trine to Chiron. And Chiron, again, is in your 9th house of beliefs. I think this gives you an opportunity to really start to feel that connection to a new version of yourself. Yes, we do see a little bit of challenges there in the Pisces energy of the 8th house, because history will come back. Right now, Saturn is starting to station. It will go direct in November, and this is where the planet is sitting sort of like with its hands on its hips, and it's challenging you to really implement that spiritual connection. Sagittarius is your 5th house of romance. It's your house of It is the natural house that you, Leo, rule. So it's fun, entertainment, hobbies, the conception of children, your high school years, and romance, and things where you put yourself out in a way that really is all about receiving enjoyment. So this is a very powerful way to sort of end the month with this awareness. While your history may creep up on you on some level and give you a little bit of grief, it's being offered for that transformation. So if we look at Pisces as your 8th house, we look at that house being one of power and control. We look at Saturn ruling authority, elders, even fears. There could be a tense moment with an elder or with an authority. And yet, as you stay authentic to yourself, okay, and you allow yourself, this is Chiron. Chiron is the wound that then transforms to the gift. Yes, you don't know how this is all going to work out just yet, but I like this trine to the moon. This is temporary trine, but sextile. This will grow throughout the day. So you may feel on an intuitive level that even though things might feel a little rocky, meaning it feels almost like, this is how I want to say, Leo, you could have like a discussion with your partner that's a little tense. You could have a discussion with an employer or someone involved in your work environment that's a little tense. You could have a discussion with an elder of some kind or an experience. It's tense, but there's something about it that ends up serving a bigger picture. So if you could sit in a moment of allowing yourself not to react, that's Mars in your 12th house. That's like out of nowhere, I'm pissed off, and then I act out, and that could challenge you. And especially seeing that Mars is in an opposition here to Aquarius, which is your seventh house of partnership. So who knows, maybe it's even you could have an argument with a partner, and it could bring up some very deep old wounds that have been chronic and what have felt irreparable. And yet at the same time, I think what Mars is calling forth is a brave inventory of not just the history, but our approach to that history, you know. So I overall think that it's a pretty good month. I think that, you know, yes, there are challenges, but we're getting into more and more transformational times as Pluto moves into Aquarius. Really, the landscape of things is going to jump into a more futuristic picture. And I think all of us are being tasked on some level to sit in an awareness of what's important to us and allowing that awareness to be the platform with which our thoughts contemplate the future. So I hope that helps all my Leo friends. November is going to be an interesting month, as is the next few months for sure. As Uranus starts to bring a lot of things up and unexpected things. So to be prepared for the unexpected isn't really possible, but to be emotionally prepared for flexibility maybe is. Not always easy for a fixed sign, but not impossible. All right, that's it for my Leos for October 2024. If you'd like to book a reading with me, I'm available. I do both astrology readings, intuitive readings. Just look in the description below. You can find out how to reach me, and I'll be back in November with your November 2024 monthly horoscope. Thank you so much. Please like, please subscribe, and please share. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.